Okay, imagine this. You're maybe digging through some old archives, right? Like Oxford's Bodleian Library.
Right.
And you stumble upon this old Bible, looks ancient, 1775, but inside, it's not just scripture.
What else is there?
There's this like fully integrated 13-month calendar, meticulously done.
13 months in a Bible.
Exactly. It just feels significant. Like it hints at a forgotten way of seeing time, maybe suggesting our modern way is, I don't know, missing something.
Missing something big, perhaps?
Yeah, what if it's a clue that our whole relationship with time got fundamentally altered somehow? And that's the fascinating, maybe slightly unsettling path we're exploring in this deep dive. We're going to unpack this idea from our sources, the idea that our modern view of time, it might be incomplete.
Or even deliberately shaped.
Right. And that older cultures had this different connection to time cycles, maybe unlocking different human potentials. We've got a really interesting mix of sources lined up, historical texts, descriptions of ancient practices, some surprising links to modern science.
And figures like Neville Goddard even come into it.
Yeah. So our mission here is to guide you through all this material. We'll pull out the key ideas, connect the dots between calendars, consciousness, manifestation.
And crucially, figure out what it all might mean for you today.
Exactly. This is for you, the listener, who wants to get the core ideas quickly, find those aha moments, and see the personal relevance in history without getting bogged down.
Ready to unpack this.
Let's do it. What's striking is how it starts with something physical, this artifact.
This Bible from 1775.
Yeah, the sources point specifically to this King James Bible in the Bodleian, not just because it's old, but because of this calendar inside.
A calendar in a Bible. It almost gives time this sacred, instruction manual quality, doesn't it?
It does. And you said 13 months.
That's what it says.
A 13-month lunar calendar woven right in, presented not just as a schedule, but more like an energetic map. A kind of temporal technology.
Temporal technology. I like that. And it didn't start in January?
No, the sources say the first month began in March. March. Okay, that feels different. We're so used to January 1st. Why March?
Well, that links directly to ancient traditions, Celtic Egyptian. They saw the spring equinox around March as the real start of the cycle.
When everything's coming back to life.
Exactly. It feels much more aligned with renewal, compared to the middle of winter. So this lunar calendar, the sources describe it as fundamentally different from our solar one, which is mostly linear, for scheduling.
Right.
This older version was about aligning consciousness, human activity, with natural rhythms.
So not just what day is it, but more like what's the energy like today?
Precisely. And the month names were different too, ending with this mysterious 13th month called Lunaris.
Lunaris sounds almost magical. What was special about it?
According to the sources, Lunaris, its 28 lunar days, was set aside for spiritual integration.
Ah, so inward focused.
Yeah, not for big external projects, but for inner work. Self-suggestion techniques, reflection, that kind of thing. Time specifically carved out for deeper consciousness.
Okay, so we've got this evidence, this 13-month calendar, possibly tied to ancient nature-based practices, showing up in a Bible centuries ago. So where did it go? Why aren't we using it?
Well, this is where the sources make a pretty bold claim. They argue this knowledge wasn't just lost, it was potentially systematically erased.
Erased.
Yeah, they point to big calendar changes in the 17th and 18th centuries as key moments in this process.
Systematically erased. That implies intention. What reason would anyone have to erase a calendar system?
Control, essentially. The sources suggest that authorities, both church and state, realized that controlling how people perceive time was incredibly powerful.
How so?
Time was seen as this valuable asset, kind of technology of consciousness, maybe too powerful to leave in everyone's hands. So controlling the calendar became a way to manage the collective psyche.
Wow. Time is political property. Do the sources give examples?
They do. Julius Caesar and the Julian calendar, for instance. Yes, it fixed astronomical issues, but he also stamped political authority onto time itself.
Renaming a month after himself, July.
Exactly. Presented as an early step in asserting human political control over natural rhythm. Then fast forward to Emperor Constantine, 4th century. He makes Sunday the official Christian sacred day.
Which was originally a pagan sun worship day, right?
Right. The sources argue this wasn't just religious. It was a huge collective reprogramming effort, shifting focus from your inner divine potential, the I am, towards external authority. They say I am.
Kind of redirecting that powerful sun energy towards institutions.
That's the idea presented. And then there's the calendar we use now, the Gregorian.
From 1582, Pope Gregory III.
Again, yes, it corrected astronomical drift. But the sources really focus on the symbolism of literally erasing 10 days. October 4th jumps straight to October 15th.
Gone, just like that.
They frame it as a ritual of restart, a kind of magical act aimed at rewriting collective memory, centralizing control over time, and crucially disconnecting it from older, more organic, maybe lunar-based rhythms.
And people didn't just accept it everywhere immediately.
No, the sources mentioned resistance. These older systems were often deeply tied into farming, moon phases, the equinoxes. It was like a sacred language.
So the shift to one standard linear calendar was a big break from that connection.
A key step, they argue. And then the Industrial Revolution really cemented it.
How so?
Mechanical time took over.
Yeah.
Standardized time. The work week, completely divorced from natural cycles, just focused on productivity, schedules.
Time is money.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Not a cosmic dance. It forced a kind of secularization, pushing aside any spiritual or cosmic dimension of time.
Okay, so that's the history of potential manipulation. But how was this ancient knowledge supposedly used? The sources talk about using time cycles, especially the moon phases, for more than just farming, for spiritual amplification, manifestation.
Right, this is where the calendar becomes applied spiritual intelligence. It's about using the phases intentionally.
Like tuning into the right cosmic frequency.
Sort of. The new moon.
Huh?
That's when you plant your mental seeds, your intentions. Start the cycle. Then the waxing moon, as it grows, that's for actively nourishing those intentions. With emotion, visualization, taking action, building faith.
Building the energy.
Exactly. Then the full moon. That always feels potent, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's described as the peak, harvest time. You step into gratitude as if it's already happened. It's the moment of maximum creative tension, where the energetic blueprint is most potent for imprinting onto reality.
And the waning moon as it shrinks.
That's for release,
Mm.
letting go of limiting beliefs, old patterns, cleansing, forgiving, clearing the space for the next cycle.
Makes sense.
And they mention specific practices for that 13th month. Lunarists, things like fasting, longer meditations, studying certain texts, all aimed at deep integration, getting ready internally.
This idea time cycles linked to inner work, consciousness. It leads to another thread in the sources, Gnosticism and
Yeah.
people like Neville Goddard.
Yeah, the connection they draw is fascinating. Gnosticism, as they describe it, wasn't about external rules, but about inner awakening, direct personal experience of the sacred within you.
Seeing the human as an expression of universal creative consciousness.
Exactly. And this focus on inner power, the sources argue, was seen as a threat by external structures.
Because if people find their power within, they don't need external authorities as much.
That's the argument. Less dependence. So suppressing Gnostic practices was strategic.
So how does Neville Goddard fit in? He was much more recent.
He's framed as someone who rediscovered or rearticulated parts of this suppressed knowledge. Maybe through his studies, they mention Ethiopia, esoteric circles.
Uh-huh.
His core teaching, imagination is God in action in man, is seen as a modern echo of that Gnostic idea, divine creative power within.
And he saw scriptures differently, too.
As psychological maps, yeah. Internal instructions, that Christ in you idea.
And his techniques, like assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, living from the end.
They're presented as practical, modern ways to apply these ancient principles. Nightly revision, replaying your day mentally, to change unwanted parts, powerful reprogramming.
And the I am affirmations.
All about reconnecting you to your core creative identity. Taking these, quite deep ancient ideas and making them actionable today. But it wasn't just the moon. The sources also talk about the days of the week, another forgotten layer.
Wait, so Monday isn't just Monday, it has its own specific energy.
That's the concept, yeah, attributed to ancient mystery schools, Alexandria, Delphi, the Chaldean Magi. And again, the sources suggest this knowledge about planetary rulers for each day and their energies was deliberately dismantled.
Why? To break collective manifestation power.
That's the claim. These ancient cultures, they suggest, really understood something like modern chronobiology, how our biology connects to time cycles.
Chronobiology, biological clocks, rhythms,
Right.
so they mapped us onto cosmic rhythms.
Seems like it. Each day was an opportunity. Sunday, ruled by the sun. Not just rest, but activating your higher self, creativity, personal power. They even mentioned the Templars using Sunday for leadership visualizations.
Interesting, like Carl Jung's higher self concept.
Exactly. Monday, moon. Enhancing intuition, psychic channels. Sources mention ancient priests using this time and even draw parallels to things like CIA remote viewing.
Wow, okay.
Tuesday, Mars. Determination, courage, will. They note how many revolutions seemingly kicked off on Tuesdays, maybe tapping into that energy.
Good stay.
Mercury, mental processing, communication, reprogramming beliefs. Alchemists apparently saw this as prime time for symbolic transmutation of thoughts.
Thursday.
Jupiter, abundance, expansion. Venetian merchants supposedly timed big deals for Thursdays.
Friday must be Venus.
Yep, relationships, creativity, harmony.
Saturday.
Saturn, structure, discipline, consolidation, building things to last.
Yeah.
They mentioned Benedictine monks organizing their lives with this Saturnian principle, structure.
And Gnostic texts, like from Nag Hammadi, supposedly had specific practices for each day. Sunday sunrise visualizations, Tuesday affirmations for courage.
Yes, it paints a picture of the week as this dynamic flow of energies, not just 7 identical slots. Losing that understanding meant losing a powerful tool.
You mentioned science earlier. Are there actual scientific parallels in the sources that give any of this weight?
This is where it gets really intriguing. They point to some unexpected connections, like the zodiac illustrations in the Old Bible.
Yeah.
Not just astrology, they suggest, but maybe mapping onto neurological centers, pineal gland, solar plexus, limbic system as interfaces between consciousness and reality.
Whoa.
They bring in Dr. Rick Strassman's DMT research, speculating the pineal might produce psychoactive compounds during certain lunar phases, maybe explaining ancient moon-timed rituals. Even Benjamin Franklin's work on animal magnetism is mentioned, seen as anticipating discoveries about human bioenergy fields. The idea of subtle energies isn't totally out there scientifically.
What about more recent stuff?
Contemporary studies are cited too. Environmental psychology at Miami University on lunar phases potentially affecting mood. Max Planck Institute research confirming our deep biological links to circadian rhythms, echoing ancient teachings.
And Dr. Russell Foster at Oxford, the pineal gland guy.
Right. His research suggesting the pineal responds not just to light, but maybe planetary electromagnetic frequencies. And the sources make a pretty strong claim that data supporting this might have faced resistance, even censorship.
Why would it be censored?
They argue our modern disconnection from these rhythms, artificial light, linear times, contributes to things like anxiety, depression, ADHD. They talk about an energetic void created by this split.
So, if we zoom out, what's the overall impact today of losing touch with these natural cosmic rhythms?
According to the sources, it's huge. Spiritual amnesia, they call it.
Right.
Undermining our innate ability to manifest, leaving us feeling kind of spiritually orphaned, unable to consciously use these cosmic waves that could amplify us. They contrast modern urban life, constant artificial light, time chopped into seconds with a life lived in sync.
That difference between our New Year in January and the ancient March one really hits home.
Totally. Celebrating renewal in deep winter. It feels off, energetically, nature's asleep. The ancient way, March equinox, everything's waking up, cooperating with that new beginning energy. The sources see the January start as working against us. Even big holidays like Christmas or Easter, rooted in solstice or lunar cycles, have mostly lost that connection. They've become about consumption, commercial calendars, furthering the disconnect.
And because we're disconnected, we look outside for answers.
Yeah, instead of trusting our own inner rhythm or alignment with cycles, we rely on external systems, what the sources call emotional planting tables created by others. We lose faith in our own timing.
Okay, so considering all this, the history, the ancient practices, the modern impact, what's the way forward? Do we need to ditch modern life?
No, not at all. The sources frame it as conscious liberation within our current lives. Time, they argue, is fundamentally a technology of the mind, a tool for creating reality.
So reclaiming control over our own time is key.
Exactly. It's presented as the most subtle, but maybe the most powerful field for personal change.
How can someone actually start reconnecting, practically?
Several starting points are offered. Simple things first. Maybe start synchronizing your planning, even small projects, with the moon phases. Notice your body's own rhythms, energy levels, sleep instead of always pushing through.
Small rituals.
Yeah, create personal rituals at key moments. New moon, full moon, equinoxes, solstices. Even just lighting a candle with intention. Start really small. Just look at the sky. Notice the moon phase. See how the daylight changes. Maybe plan expansive activities for spring, summer, introspective ones for autumn, winter.
So using the lunar cycle consciously like the ancients supposedly did.
Yes, as a guide. Intend at the new moon. Act and build during the waxing phase. Receive and give thanks at the full moon. Release during the waning phase. Use the flow.
Are there tools or traditions already out there that do this?
Sure, the sources mention things like the biodynamic calendar in farming or shamanic traditions working with lunar cycles. They also suggest creating something like an astral lunar journal, not just a diary, but a place to track your inner world, dreams, insights, synchronicities alongside the moon phases or days of the week. It becomes your personal spiritual GPS to find your fertile times.
And doing this with others, like those Gnostic groups.
That scene is really valuable. Study or practice groups are called consciousness incubators. Sharing experiences, asking questions, celebrating wins together, it builds confidence, helps overcome blocks, creates a shared energy. Looking at the bigger picture, the sources paint this vision of society if we integrated this wisdom. Time is a living thing again, equinoxes as sacred points, planetary days recognized through the different energetic slavers.
That doesn't sound like going backwards. It sounds more like evolving.
Exactly. Not regression, but evolution. Integrating ancient wisdom, intuition, science, the sacred, merging measured time with lived, meaningful time. The core message seems to be that the biggest inner revolution starts when you see time itself as a technology, a tool that can be your ally, not just a clock ticking. Reclaiming that sovereignty, starting personally, is where the change begins.
Okay, so wrapping up the key takeaway from this deep dive. The sources are telling us time isn't just neutral. It's presented as this powerful technology tied deeply to our consciousness, our creative power.
And its historical manipulation, they argue, has potentially really impacted our ability, individually and collectively, to shape our reality.
But understanding this history and consciously trying to reconnect with these natural cosmic rhythms, that's offered as a path back.
A path to reactivating latent potential, living a more aligned, maybe more potent life.
So here's something to think about as you go about your day. What if the most powerful thing you could do to manifest the reality you truly want isn't learning some new technique or just pushing harder? What if it's something much older? Simply remembering and realigning with the ancient deliberate design of time itself.